What's up? I'm Granger.
I'm AntMan.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Parker.
This is the 99 for 1 podcast where our mission is to reach the one and to equip the 99 to do the same. That comes from Luke 15, where Jesus is saying, how many of you that had 100 sheep and lost one wouldn't go find that one? And really, that's what this podcast has become. What is this, episode 5?
5, yeah.
And we have repeatedly said that no matter the topic we do, we want to we want to not think about a global appeal as much as one gospel-changed perspective.
Amen.
Which brings us to our topic today.
Mm-hmm. How should Christians feel about ICE? Not that it's winter, not that you live north, but the immigration organization.
So it's interesting because as we started talking about this topic, Parker immediately said, that topic is a lose-lose. And I do not disagree.
And what do you mean by that, though?
Well, I mean, it's from a social media, marketing, building a platform standpoint, this topic, we can't win.
Yeah.
There's no matter what we say in this podcast, people are already mad. Right now, they're mad listening to us, and we haven't even gotten to the topic on both sides. And so, but that's appealing to me because I've already built the platform and I've chased the things.
Right.
I don't really care. I want to seek truth and ground it in the Bible and kind of communicate how we would work through a very sensitive topic that's highly debated and bringing all kinds of disunity, not only in this country, but in the world. What do we do? How do we work through that as Christians? And so it would be easy to just avoid this topic and say, did dinosaurs really live, on Earth? Or is the Earth really, 1 billion years old? We could do that and be safe and no one's going to worry. Or we could dive right into a very hot topic and use the Bible to help inform how we speak about it.
Yeah, and while I know that there's a lot of new people that are just found this podcast and just came in on it, several of you are OGs, and they came from the Granger Smith podcast or came from the EE podcast, and the truth was the same there too. It always went back to, well, what does the Bible say about it, regardless of what it is. We've talked about nicotine on this one already.
Yeah,
we've talked about online church. We've talked about today. We're talking about ICE. Before this, we talked about everything else, and it always went back to the word. Well, what does the Bible say about it? And that, we hope and we believe that should change whatever that stirring up is inside you. If you're mad about something, reflect and look, well, what does the Bible say about it? And the Bible should change how we live and what we do and how we think about it, not the opposite.
Yeah, because opinions are fleeting and we change our minds and like the seasons, and we could be influenced by a really good speaker or a really passionate person speaking about this, or we could be influenced by and this could actually be manipulated in some way because of a political agenda. And so all these things change. Even our own emotions change. Like day to day, I wake up in different moods depending on how well I slept, if I have allergies or not. There's 1,000 things that change me and the way I feel. The Bible says the same.
Yeah.
I always like what John Piper, the pastor, said. He would say, I'm going to explain this to you because this is what I'm seeing in the text, but don't just take my word for it and don't take anybody's word for it. Go test it for yourself and see if you're seeing this in the text.
So good.
So where do we start with this topic? How should Christians feel about ICE and immigration and illegal immigration and refugees, and how should we think through these things? When we say that, where do we start?
I was going to be my question to you, like how deep do you jump into this? But what do you look first at? What is that there is a right way and a wrong way, or do that's I think that a lot of the discussion kind of starts there. Well, this is the wrong way. Well, what is the right way? Well, the right way's too hard, or does that negate, okay, well then now the wrong way is fine,
Yeah, I hear you. I think probably the best place to start is in a book called Beginnings.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise known
Genesis.
as Genesis, which is the first book in the Bible. And on that most people in the first page of the first chapter of the first book of the Bible, there's a little verse 27 down here. And this is a good place to start for a lot of topics. if we're dealing with people, let's start here first. And a lot of topics are dealing with people. Verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. That's incredible. And you could think for a year, you could meditate on that one idea and still not unpack what it means that the creator of the universe decided to create a being that would image him. That doesn't mean we look like him in every way, but we are an image of him. So when you see another human being, although there's 7 billion of them, you can get numb to the fact, because there's so many of them, you can get numb to the fact that every single one of them, whether it's a baby or an old man or a homeless person or a president, they are an imager of the creator.
Yeah.
And that should change the perspective on how you hear them and treat them or think of them. It should. If you think about that long enough, and it should.
Yeah, I think we forget that a lot too.
It's easy to forget.
Yeah.
So before we think about politics or Democrats or Republicans or ICE or borders or policy that we might disagree with, it all starts with the image bearers of God. That's who we're dealing with on both sides, whether you're for ICE or against ICE, whether you're for immigrants or against immigrants or illegal immigrants. They're all people, meaning we start with this. We start with understanding. That might sound obvious, right? But if we don't start there, then we start to dehumanize people and make people less, because this person works for this government, they're less of. Or because this person fled and is seeking asylum here, they're less of. Or because this person's rich or poor, we start having partiality in these things, and we start ranking people into systems, and eventually one of the groups gets dehumanized and becomes less of a human. And you go, but they act like it. No, that's besides the point. If you start with they are, then that doesn't matter how they act. We look at them as they are, image bearers of God.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
Meaning, like, you could view illegal immigrants with a lack of that godly lens of I guess sympathy is the right amount of word, or a love for them. Like you can love them as image bearers of God, not to say that you're going to continue to allow them to participate in illegal activity, but that's the lens that you're viewing it with, not dehumanizing them. I'm just kind of processing what you said.
Yeah, or flip it, and the ICE officer that's demonized, same argument.
Yeah, putting him into a category of just a white guy who's abusing power.
Yeah,
and
So to that point, what we're dealing with this topic as Christians is two lanes. It's so many times I think about this. Like, just go ahead and use the analogy of a back road, and you got ditches on either side. Call it left and right, whatever you want to call it. But there's a road, there's a path, and it's probably a narrow path, and there's ditches on either side. In this specific topic, here's one ditch. One ditch is they're image bearers. They're people. We should love them. Yes, they've broken the law. Yes, they are illegal. Yes, some of them are criminals, but hey, love them, have compassion on them, be merciful to them, go easy, allow them to do what they need to do, and because we love them, have empathy for their situation. Mm-hmm. That's one ditch. You can't go there. You can't go all the way in there. The other side is we have a law that's for our good, and the law exists for our protection. If you break the law, you're outside of it. And if you get punished for that, that's on you. If you get killed for this, that's on you. It doesn't matter. You broke the law. You're putting me in danger and my family, my country in danger. So it doesn't matter what else you do. You're out. Good riddance. Those are two ditches. You can't get in either one of those ditches. You have to take the path in the middle.
Why is the second one a ditch? Just out of curiosity, like what's wrong with
because
what you just said?
It actually, where's the love your neighbor? Where is Leviticus 19:33? When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So where is on the right ditch? We'll call it the right ditch, might as well. Where is the love? You love your neighbor. Where's the story of the Good Samaritan in this? Where it doesn't matter what they have done, you love him. So
they should all stay.
So
that's what people hear you say.
What I'm saying is both of them are dangerous ditches. Yeah. You can't be all of either one of those. So you have to walk a path as a Christian down the middle that says laws are good. Yes. Laws are for our protection. Yes. Countries should have borders. Yes. But people that break those laws are not less human. They should face the consequences of breaking the law. But we should love them, and we should have compassion on them, and we should seek their good, and we should seek policy change if necessary. But as the law exists now, they cannot break it, and we couldn't encourage them to break it. But if someone enforces the law with too much force, without compassion, that is wrong, and they must face the consequences for upholding the law that has been granted to you by the people, probably in some kind of capacity from the public. You are misusing the power that's been given to you by God, says Romans 13, and you are misusing it for abuse. So you are now in the wrong. So you see this narrow path?
And then on the other side, you say, well, you can't have hordes of people blowing ear-splitting whistles in that God-given law's ears to purposely piss them off, to purposely mess with their authority, their judgment,
impede it.
and to impede the judgment that they're trying to enact on behalf of the government. ICE is not making all this stuff up on their own. They're enforcing what the government's telling them to do.
And I think that's an important point. It's not a group of guys who just got together and go, hey, let's go find all the quote unquote, the illegals and get them all out of this country. No, it came from the government. It wasn't just a group of dudes that got together and went and did this, right? As we talk about what is that line in the middle, that you're not in one ditch on the left or one ditch on the right.
Yeah.
In the middle, what does the tone of that conversation sound like then?
It has to remain without partiality, which is difficult because that means
I think establishing that is important though, is to go, hey, this isn't an easy thing to do.
No, it's not easy. We have to also admit that most of what we see and know has been manipulated for some kind of political agenda.
Yeah,
on either side,
ratings,
whatever it might be.
Because both ditches get the eyeballs, which make money.
Right. Yeah, both ditches get eyeballs. Maybe maybe what we're seeing isn't even true anyway. So let's get past all that fluff. That's the cream on the coffee. Let's get rid of it all, and let's talk just us in this room right now. Talk about what we know to be true. So we'll start with this: should a country have borders?
Yeah, I don't think you're a country if you don't, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
And just wide open land.
Yeah, you're not a country without borders.
And God, in the Bible, God is very, very clear with borders.
Yeah.
So should the building on that, should borders be defended? Or is it even a border at all?
Yeah.
If anyone can come and go as they please, and there's no need for any kind of documentation or
there would be no order. There would be no citizens.
Yeah.
There would be no state of order. Who's in charge here? Who's the good authority?
Yeah.
We're human beings built by God to be under good authority, and the government is these people that are to enact it doesn't happen everywhere, obviously, and it doesn't happen perfectly, but in an ideal situation, they're enacting good God-given authority for the citizens' good. But if you just have a bunch of people wandering around and there's no border and there's no order, then that can't happen.
Well, no one's traveled more than you in this room. With the four of us here, there's no and Preston and Caden over there. I don't think anybody's traveled more. Every time you've gone into another country, they've always stamped their passport, right? To know that you came in, what you were there for, and then when you were going to leave. Why do they do that?
Yeah, there has to be a vetting process of some kind, and a large part of that is protection for their own country.
Right.
Protection from not only criminals, but protection for biological reasons. Like, what have you walked in a field with sick cows? Because we don't want that stuff in the country.
Of course,
It could be just that. It could be like smuggling reasons. We don't want your money or your drugs or whatever you might be. Do you have this much money or any more than this money? You need to report it. So if we've established now that a country should have borders and the borders should be protected, then the next question, if we build on this small argument, should there be an agency that does that work?
Somebody has to.
It's not obvious, right?
That protects the borders.
If a country needs borders, and that's a good thing, and then the borders need to be protected, and that's a good thing, then should there be delegated some kind of organization that does the job of that protection?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
What if people break that law and break through that protection and break through that agency and are now wreaking havoc in the said country? Should there be an agency of some kind that makes sure they find them and take them back out? So far, we haven't hit any snags, and I don't really know who would disagree with this so far.
I think a lot of people disagree with the wreaking havoc. You'd say, they would just say they're just here living their lives, loving their neighbor, producing for the economy. I think you lose a lot of people.
So let's just
I don't disagree with you.
Let's not make speculation yet. Let's not make what we know from the news. Let's just say we know for a fact someone came across that's a criminal in some way. Should there be an agency that tries to find them, or should this just be every man for himself? If you find someone, kick them out?
Well, I think if it's going back to you going to another country, they want to know what you're there for. And if they found out that while you were here, you went and robbed a bunch of stores, they would go, okay, that's right. Granger came into our country on this day and he was picked up for this. Yeah, we can't have that here. Yeah. You would be shipped out, right?
Yes.
I think that's, I don't think.
By who? By
that government?
Random citizens?
No. Yeah. I definitely think it's by the government. Yeah.
By some kind of government agency. So I think so far we haven't really made an argument in this specific context, besides the fact that, if there is an agency that does this extrication, then okay, fine.
I think more of maybe, and we may be getting to this, so back me up.
I don't know where we're going.
Well, what I want to say is like, I think that's the, I want to say that comes across to me like the common sense part of it. If you did it the right way and you came in and you started making trouble, you're going to get escorted out. You're going to be asked to leave. What about people who have a terrible, terrible life in the country that they live in, and they want to come here and they want to make a better life for themselves, but going through the normal legal way of getting into this country is so extraneous that they can't, it just doesn't happen for them and won't happen for them. Or if it does, even the hope is 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, not today where I am suffering today. I think that's the other ditch where people go, you haven't even talked about those people. Not us, I just mean in general, is that what are you doing for those people? That's the ones that I'm more concerned about than I am the guy just, coming in.
Okay.
And wreaking havoc.
Let's kind of break apart. I think what you're saying is great for discussion. So let's break it apart. This week, as we were preparing, knowing that we were going to talk about this, I texted maybe 20 guys. What are your thoughts on this? One of them was Preston, who's sitting here with us off camera, and Preston said something interesting. I like to ask guys because it's like, I don't think my brain immediately would have gone there. But Preston said, I can't help but think that if someone came to you and asked you, should I sneak my family into the U.S. for a better life, would we tell them, oh, of course, that's a great idea? No, we would not say that.
Right.
We would say, brother or sister, that is dangerous. Yeah. I care for you. Don't put yourself in a position to live in fear and possibly get in trouble. Instead, we would offer help in some other way. So That's not totally what you're saying yet, but it's the beginning of the conversation of let's start with if we had a friend in Mexico that goes, man, I need a better life. I'm thinking about swimming the river and just taking my chances. I would be like, actually don't do that. Right? I would say don't do that.
Because initially you were talking about, should a government have an agency that enforces the taking of and getting out of the country illegal immigrants who are criminals? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think that's an easy thing to be like, yes, if you came into a country illegally and then now you're engaging in criminal activity, that's an obvious thing to get behind. Be like, yeah, we should get them out. And so then the thing I was going to say was, okay, well, what if they came in illegally, but they're just law-abiding citizens once they're here? Well, they still came here illegally, and then so that's kind of the middle ground. And then what you just mentioned was an interesting scenario. And a lot of people like to mention like the extreme, like AntMan said, well, because on the right ditch, you say, well, they're all just criminals. And then the left ditch, you say, they're all completely innocent and are coming from terrible circumstances. And actually, if you don't allow them in, then you're like basically a murderer because they're just going to die and you're really cruel.
You have no compassion.
Right.
Yeah.
So part of your question was, what about it? There's two things going on. One from you and one from you, Parker. Parker, yours is, I want to get to, what about the people that they're already here? What do you do with them? And then another one of your questions, Ant, was, what about the people that are stuck in a country that's really bad?
Right.
And they might never get here.
Yeah.
Both of those scenarios, the problem is, let's start with Romans 13:1. We have to see this biblical lens of Romans 13:1. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. For there's no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rules are not a terror of good conduct, but to bad. So for rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. So there is never a situation where compassion has to compete against God's law. There's never a time when you go, love wins over law. And you should also never say, well, law wins over love. Mm-hmm. Those two things must coexist. That's the narrow path. And so to AntMan, what about the family that we love, that the people can't get here? That still doesn't give us license to break the law.
Correct.
Because we love them so much and they're in such a bad situation that this is now finally the reason we should break the law and sneak them in.
Right.
To Parker's, they've been here for 20 years. So they have broken the law. Our compassion doesn't overwhelm the law where we say, well, because 20 years has gone by and because you're actually not a criminal, I guess, the law doesn't matter for you. However, that same person, we love them and we care for them and we invite them to our house for a meal and we feed them and we tell them, we share the gospel with them. So there's this middle ground of, I'm going to love you and care for you and feed you and clothe you and help.
If they're law-abiding citizens, because you just lost a lot of people with what you just said. Because they're imagining the criminal Somalians in Minneapolis.
I would say correct. Yeah, because if you are actively breaking the law and dangerous to my family, I'm not going to bring you into my house.
Because that's what everybody says. Well, Granger, why don't you open up your house to them? Mm-hmm. Billie Eilish, we're all on stolen land. You're in a $14 million mansion. Why don't you have them all up to your, mm-hmm. That's just...
No.
So you're not saying that you should have criminals over to your house?
No, I'm actually saying, I'm saying that the law applies to the Somalians and it applies to the woman that was 7 years old from Mexico, who's now 37 years old. She's been here 30 years. They're both illegal. I'm saying neither one of them, because the woman's been here 30 years and she doesn't break the law anymore, doesn't make her now legal according to the law. Not according to me,
right?
But according to the law, right. She's still illegal. So that's where compassion never competes against law. She's not better than the Somalians and doesn't. but we do treat them differently, as far as not out of in a way of loving the woman more, but in a way of, well, we should be smart with protecting us against criminals that could actually hurt us. And if you love them, the criminal, which we should, we want to prevent them from digging into deeper sin and sinning more as criminals. We don't want that to happen. So I would rather him be arrested, incarcerated, behind bars, under a controlled environment where he has a chance then to hear the gospel and not keep sinning. Okay? So the question is then, how, if you're the officer, let's flip the scenario.
Sure. Yeah.
The officer is now meeting the woman that's been here 30 years that hasn't hurt a fly, and you're an ICE officer. You coming in with brute force? You throwing her in handcuffs? You trying to prove a point with her? You making a political point with this?
All right.
You're in the wrong. Now you're breaking God's law. That still doesn't get the woman off the hook.
Right.
Because he did that to her. But this is the kind of impartiality we have to think of as Christians that's very difficult. Because whatever side of the bed we roll out of in the morning, we have to come in and go, God is always right. And this has proven itself over and over and over and over. The Bible is always right. So I have a friend, you guys know him too, who's was on Border Patrol for a long time, Jesse. He texted me. He said, I believe in the enactment and the enforcement of laws. Not a shocking thing to hear from a former Border Patrol.
Yeah.
That being said, the law is what dictates immigration policies, and there's a difference between illegal immigration and immigration. Today's society conflates the two. Yeah. The distinction is critical, he says. You could be for the enforcement of law while simultaneously wanting reform to allow more opportunity to rescue those who seek freedoms of America. That's a big thing to understand. Mm-hmm. You could be for the laws of America and for saying these laws aren't good enough. We need reform. But until they're reformed, I still have to obey the law so it'll go well for us. Then Jesse continues, when lawmaking amending is bypassed by feelings and perceived, quote, fairness, we make a dangerous precedent very similar to that problem of us as individuals. So we do what's right in our own eyes. Oh, that was a great text too.
Yeah.
Then we can get deeper. Are we ready to go deeper? The church, as Christians, because we're thinking of Christian perspective, the church is not the state, and the state's not the church. That is highly. That's a very divisive statement in itself. But here's what we need to think through this: 2 Corinthians 5:20. We are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. That's our first ministry. We are ambassadors for Christ. So before our country, before our political party, before our emotional agenda, we are ambassadors for Christ. God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of God, be reconciled to God. So God gives this authority, according to Romans 13, God gives the authority to the state to restrain evil and maintain order. And then God gives the church a totally different charge here, right? According to 2 Corinthians. Reconcile through the gospel. That's the charge of the church. Reconcile people to God. And be the mouthpiece of God to proclaim the gospel. We had a Bible study this morning. We were talking about 2 Timothy. And Paul says, I was appointed a preacher. Well, that word that he says is actually herald. He's appointed me a herald. And in Spanish, for instance, it's heraldo. That's how that is rendered. So a herald is someone that is the mouthpiece for the king. Mm-hmm. he goes, he's like, if you think about the old medieval times movies where they go, hear ye, thus says the king, a new law has been made. You shall obey the law from the king. That's the herald. That's what he does. So Paul says, I was appointed a herald. And we have that same ministry. That we were appointed this ministry of reconciliation to herald the gospel. That comes before heralding the country or the law, right? But when Christians confuse those two things, the state restrains evil and the church heralds the gospel, bad things happen. Because what happens is they either demand that the state preaches grace,
Right.
or that the church enforces the law. You can't, the church cannot enforce the law, and the state is not responsible for grace.
Yeah, that's kind of, no. It's just, that's almost like having the, instead of walking between the two ditches, having the ditches come together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
know?
a good way to look at it.
And it makes the path even more narrow if one's trying to do the other's job.
Yeah.
So is your
Because they're not
point
going to be good either way.
is your point that the local church should not suit up in body armor and get some ARs and go in handcuffs and go tracking down illegals, because our primary responsibility is to make disciples of all nations and share the gospel? And that you're saying that the government's primary responsibility is not to proclaim, repent, and believe in Jesus Christ, everybody in the United States? Like, I'm just trying to connect
Well, if
these
I'd
in
say
my head
that's my
because I've
point.
always been confused by church and state.
Well, if our mission, we are to obey the law insofar as we're not in sin. This was a huge discussion in Nazi Germany. Like, well, what about Romans 13?
Yeah.
Well, the government is in sin here.
Yeah.
They're telling you to sin, and you cannot violate that.
Yeah.
So you're out then. Now, you might be breaking the law of the land, but you're not breaking God's law in that. That takes discernment. That was very obvious in Nazi Germany.
And those on the right would be very weary of government overreach and prefer small government and be like, you stay out of my business, government. But then at the same time, when it comes to enforcing something with illegal immigration, we're like, you need to consent to the government, So it's kind of interesting, especially on the conservative right, kind of those two things hanging into balance. Desiring small government, being very weary of government overreach with the history of the United States, but then also desiring for them to enforce strong borders. Sorry, I don't know if that threw you off, but
No, it's important to think through, because as we are ambassadors for Christ and the gospel comes out from us, we can't ever limit that to laws, because that's our ministry. So although we can ourselves obey law, and we could tell others that it would go well for them to not break the law, none of that should ever stop us from our first ministry of proclaiming, heralding the gospel. And if you forget the very first point we made, that we're image bearers,
Yeah.
then you lose all of that.
So let me ask you this. What does it practically look like for the church to remain the church, ambassadors of reconciliation, without either baptizing state power or demanding that the state act like the church?
So the churches over the, really since the Reformation have kind of battled out what that needs to look like. Roman Catholics had a very different stance, because they were the authority. And it's interesting because there are still groups that say we are totally separated, like the Mennonites. In fact, Marv, dear friend of mine.
They stay out of politics altogether?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, not only the church as a whole, but individually, they wouldn't be in law enforcement or in
wow.
in
City councils,
City
that type of thing,
council, and so Marv, guest of this podcast, friend of this podcast, and just longtime brother. I asked him because he's gonna give his ideas, and this is what he said. He said, this is one area that can get sticky for Christians that are politically involved. He said, without speaking of himself, without having a foot in government and a foot in the church, I could focus fully on loving them as my neighbor and sharing the gospel. He said, I know that Paul, exercising his rights as a Roman, is often put forth as an example, but it was never at the expense of sharing the gospel. And I think these verses sum it up very well. He's talking about 1 Corinthians 9, 16 to 23. He says, for I preach the gospel. This is Paul talking. For I preach the gospel. That gives me no ground for boasting. For necessity is laid upon me. Woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. For if I do this of my own will, I have a reward. But if not my own will, I am still entrusted with a stewardship. Then what is of my reward? That in my preaching I may present the gospel free of charge, so as not make full use of my right in the gospel. For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews, I've become a Jew in order to win Jews. To those under the law, I've become one under the law, though not myself being under the law, that I might win those who were under the law. To those outside the law, I became as one outside the law. Not that I am outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak ones, I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do all for the sake of the gospel, that I might share with them in its blessings.
Yeah.
There are stories, even in our American history, of African-American Christians that sold themselves into slavery in Jamaica to share the gospel with the Jamaicans. That's one example I was just reading of yesterday. Talk about living out 1 Corinthians 9. There have been people that have sold themselves into slavery to preach the gospel to the slaves. Patrick's an example of this in the 4th century. We tend to think of St. Patrick as, the March 17th leprechaun guy drinking green beer. No, Patrick was an amazing saint with an amazing story, and he would not have spoken of himself in that way. He's talked of himself as the lowliest of the low. And he was taken captive and brought into slavery in Ireland from England. He escaped, went back to England, and was overwhelmed with the idea that he needed to go back and sell himself back into it in order to preach back to those people the gospel, because that's what mattered above everything else to him.
What an encouragement to us. Like, golly, that makes me feel horrible. They're literally selling their souls back into slavery to preach the gospel. And I'm thinking in my mind, did I even tell anybody the gospel this week?
Yeah.
Like, here in my safe, comfortable United States of America, I need to step up my game.
The word does that kind of convicting with all of us.
Yeah, so I had a question about primary posture being to be a gospel witness. How do you do that with criminals? Because many times in this episode we said love your neighbor as yourself. We should love criminals as we should, is what you said. We're supposed to be a gospel witness. We're supposed to preach the gospel. How do you do that to somebody that is here or that's leaving because they were captured? How do you love them and be a gospel witness when they killed 110 babies?
The loving thing to do to a criminal, and I think we're not talking about a legal immigrant woman that cleans houses in San Antonio that's been doing that 25, right? That's not quite what we're saying. You're
I'm talking about like federal prison,
Yeah.
hardcore murder,
yeah.
like trafficking, killing babies.
The loving thing to do, to love your neighbor with that man, is to have him arrested and under just penalty of the civil law. Because that's the only chance he has to stop sinning, to stop digging the hole deeper, to be incarcerated, and even if he's on death row, to be put in an isolated situation to then hear the gospel. That is the most loving thing. The most loving thing to do to a sinner is get him to stop sinning.
Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so don't
Because
fear
I
me.
think that's the biggest question for a lot of people is like, make sure that they are sent away for good. But there's a follow up to that, which is cool. Make sure they're sent away, but Lord willing, they hear the gospel in their cell, or they have a Bible in their cell, and they come to know Jesus.
Yeah, and you don't lose that compassion. Like
Yeah.
this, you see them not as somebody who, man, I can't wait for that guy for what he's done. He's going to rot in hell. God's
Right.
going to judge him
Yeah.
because look at everything that he deserves. And then the posture of the Christian is just, oh God, I deserve, how bad a punishment do I deserve for all of my sins? We all know inwardly how wicked our hearts are. If our hearts and our minds played on a projector, our thoughts for the last 20 years of our life in view of a stadium, how awful would people
Yeah.
know that truly I am? So the posture is, yes, enforce the law. The penalty for their law is hopefully to bring their soul to repentance, and then preach
Yeah.
the gospel as you enact the law, and then but not dehumanizing them and thinking that, I mean, truly that you're any better.
One of my favorite stories is the thief on the cross, and the law was obviously enforced with him for whatever he did because he was on the cross to be put to death, and he was saved at the last second.
Yeah, man.
Some objections that people would have. I want to kind of get your thoughts on these. So, starting the first one, if you really loved immigrants, you wouldn't support ICE or enforcement at all.
Okay, that's great that we just talked about it. So what Tyler's saying is, what's the loving thing to do to a hardened criminal? Have them incarcerated. Have you guys seen, by chance, that crazy prison in El Salvador? Oh, man,
guess I
y'all got to
have.
find this on YouTube. There's documentaries about this.
Okay.
El Salvador created this prison. It's the hardest. You guys heard of this? You all heard of this? It's the craziest prison. I forgot the name of it. So, you look it up while we're talking. But it is crazy. And it is so locked down. It's the most secure prison in the world. But the gangs that what's that gang that's like that Latin American gang that's crazy, that 13 something, what is it?
MS-13?
MS-13, yeah. All the leaders of MS-13, they're all in there.
Okay.
The crime has gone down in El Salvador
Okay.
at a crazy rate
Because of this prison.
because
Yeah.
of this prison.
No
It's
one wants
so
to go to prison.
scary
Yeah.
that no one wants to go there.
Yeah.
And so they do in the documentary. There's a section in there. They're all in there hearing the gospel. These MS-13 gang leaders with all covered in tattoos with teardrops all down their face in their prison garments, sitting there listening to a man with a Bible telling them about Jesus.
Wow.
How else would they hear if they weren't taken out of their sin and put in this isolated incarceration? Right. That's the most loving thing to do, right? So the question, how could you love immigrants and support ICE, is how would what agency or organization is there to enforce taking the criminal away from the sin that he's in? It has to be somebody. Is it going to be local law enforcement, local sheriffs? It seems practical to have an agency that does it. Therefore, we have ICE. And then you flip the coin and you go, and if you're an ICE agent, you've been given a great responsibility.
Yes. Yeah.
You better use this responsibility that you've been given. And you better show compassion while upholding the law at the same time. Because if you go in ruthless and make stupid decisions or use bad judgment, then you will pay for that. This is the narrow path.
Narrow path, for sure. Another one, Leviticus.
Sorry, go ahead,
I'm
Parker.
sorry.
What's it called?
It's called the Terrorism Confinement Center.
Okay.
Centro. Well, yeah. The Spanish acronym is Centro CCOT.
CCOT
Is what people
CCOT,
call it.
yeah.
Up to 40,000 inmates. El Salvador's government under President Nayib Bukele launched the crackdown in 2022 after a wave of gang violence. Tens of thousands of suspected gang members have been arrested and held in the facilities. Yeah.
This would never work in the U.S. because there would be protests.
Yeah,
Amid
of
a
course,
nation,
yeah.
they had a nationwide state of emergency because there was so much gang-related violence there from
Wow.
MS-13.
CCOT comes in there. They get fed. Tyler, you'll like this. They get fed like 800 calories a day or something crazy low. And it's all like flour and no protein. It's basically rice and bread, 800 calories. So they're all super skinny and they have no protein and no energy on purpose.
To
It's
not get in
part of
trouble,
the-
yeah,
It's part
sure.
of their punishment.
These people who say, or someone who would say, Leviticus only applies to legal immigrants, so Christians don't owe anything to undocumented people. I think I didn't read that part, that we owe nothing to undocumented people. Did we read that in the Bible?
Oh, all of us at some point were undocumented. with
Of
something.
course.
Yeah, yeah. That's the other side of the ditch. That's using law without compassion, without love.
Yeah, and kind of saying that Romans 13 means Christians should support whatever ICE does without question.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course not. Of course not. Law breaking never infringes upon compassion, and compassion should never become law breaking.
How do we do in a lose-lose conversation about this?
I think people are still mad.
I'm trying to think of what people may have heard.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm just trying
But
to think
also,
of objections.
And if you listened or watched all the way to the end here, did you take it all in, or did you only take parts, which is what we do so much with this topic, is that we're only given little slivers of what is happening. We're not given the overall picture. We're only given a little bit of this here, and I'm going to use this. It'll incite people for this, and this will get the other side, and this little piece will get the other side, you know.
Yeah, I think we have to stand firm and say that Christians don't have the luxury of panic
Yeah.
or cruelty or tribalism.
Yeah.
No, we don't have that luxury. We have to be impartial, and we have to stand firm. We have to. We can't outsource oppression to governments, or we can't outsource over loving compassion to the governments. No, that's on us, and we also don't get to pretend that law doesn't matter. We don't get any of those. We're set free from all that with the gospel. From the gospel, we're set free in Christ. We're set free from panic and anxiety and lack of self-control and worry and reliance on a government civil entity. We don't rely on that stuff. We know that God appointed them for our good, and we know that we must obey because things will go well for us. That is such an obvious thing. Obey the law and things will go well for you. Don't speed and you're not going to get pulled over.
Right.
And then you're not going to have to pay a crazy fine, and you're not have to go to the DMV and you stand in line. Things will go well for you if you just go the speed limit.
Yeah.
But I don't like the speed limit. Then we could work on reforming that. But in the meantime, go the speed limit. Hey, sometimes I get preaching on this podcast, and I forget to mention that I live inside this world. I speed sometimes.
Yeah.
I break things and I go, I have to reel myself back in. So I don't ever want to speak on here like I'm the guy that knows it all. I know what the Bible says, and then I have to then adapt the way I act to this because I know this is right.
Same for us all.
We have spoken a couple times that we're set free from this gospel. And then we know we've also spoken that Paul was appointed as a herald of the gospel. And this gospel is we have this podcast called 99 for One, seeking the one that's lost. We don't ever want an episode to go by without reminding people that the gospel is an offer to all people. It goes out and is proclaimed to all people. Not all people will respond. But that does not negate the fact that we proclaim it to all. And that message is that Christ came to die for sinners, and that all that turn to him would be forgiven because of his sacrifice, not because of what you've done, but because of your faith and your trust in him and what he did on the cross, you will be forgiven. And those that believe that, with faith in that, their faith shows itself up in good works. Not because the good works create the faith, but faith that's alive is always active.
That's right.
Amen. Look to Christ and be saved. Turn from your sin, turn to Christ, and you will be saved. God, I love that Spurgeon said, Jesus has never denied a sinner that has come to him, and he will not start with you. All who come to him will be saved.
Amen. You got a book over there?
Appropriately titled Narrow Gate, Narrow Way.
Cool.
Paul Washer wrote this book. We do a book giveaway every time here, and this book is a whopping 50 pages.
Like half pages. These are small.
And they're small. Yeah. There's small pages. In fact, mine's all marked up. I need to find one that's not marked up. But man, it's such a good book. If you're listening right now, what we do is these book giveaways. We want to be able to mail a book out for every episode. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something you read. I hope you read it, but it could also be something you share. Or you get 4 of them on Amazon for $6 or whatever they are, and pass them out to your friends. It's a great little book. Narrow Gate, Narrow Way, Paul Washer, and it is understanding the gospel in all ways. So what should they comment below on the YouTube channel?
What do you think?
Narrow?
Narrow? Just narrow?
I like to look on there, though, and see comments that actually encourage me. So how about seek the narrow way?
That's good.
Does it need to be hashtagged?
No.
Mm-mm.
Seek the narrow way.
Just the beginning or the end of whatever you're writing. Maybe that's all you write.
I want people that haven't listened yet to go to the episode and look on the comments, and a bunch of people saying, seek the narrow way.
That's right.
And avoid the
That's
ditches.
good.
That really is a good book. You guys should really read that one.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Have you read this yet, Ant?
No.
Well, I'm going to get you one too because you're going to love it.
Okay.
It's super easy.
Yeah, even if you win, everybody should just go to Amazon. It's like, what, $6 and just get it.
It's very cheap. Narrow Gate, Narrow Way. Comment below. So wherever you're listening right now, run over to our YouTube page, which is 99 for One, the podcast.
That's right.
On YouTube.
Yep.
Go ahead and hit that subscribe too. That would be nice.
And what was the comment again?
Comment, seek the narrow way.
All right, there you go. Seek the narrow way.
Do you have any comments to read?
Yeah, I got one from last week's. Sorry, I closed out here. Oh, this was good. Thank you for always talking. Last week we were talking about online church. Thank you for always talking about this stuff out. I have learned so much in the couple of years that I have been watching. This is Melissa. She says, I live in North Phoenix area and was a member of a mega church for many years. It wasn't until we went through a major crisis with family that my eyes were opened to know what a healthy church looked like by the Holy Spirit through you. We have now been attending a smaller church that preaches by exposition. I have grown so much in the last year. Thank you for teaching me. Love you guys.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's the one for this one.
That's what I was going to say. It's got the one, yeah.
For anyone else, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. So comment below your name and where you're listening from, and AntMan will read that. And then a little tease on next week. We're going to bring Marshall Canales in here.
Nice.
Former guest of the Granger Smith podcast. And we're going to discuss something that we got a lot of comments from on the last one because we kind of teased it a little bit. Are small groups actually hurting the fellowship in your local church? Oh, the comments are firing up right now. I can feel it. Are small groups actually hurting you? And I need to clarify. I'm not talking about small groups. I'm talking about small groups.
All one word?
As said in America. Small groups. My church has small groups. Is that actually hurting your fellowship? Marshall's going to come in, talk about that, Lord willing, on the next episode. See you guys. Yee yee.